Doraemon has almost become a familiar name to everyone. We are all accustomed to a clumsy but kind-hearted Nobita, the versatile gadget cat Doraemon who is afraid of mice, the adorable Shizuka, the sharp-tongued Sunio, and the big-nosed Jane, along with endless adventures with magical gadgets. But what if one day, Doraemon is no longer the Doraemon you know? When Jane has actually been missing for a long time, and Nobita has always concealed his true identity? Before we begin, I hope you can give MG Horror Studio a thumbs up, share, and hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell for the latest updates. Let's find out in today's video. Sawashi and the conspiracy to ruin Nobita's life. The first time Doraemon meet Nobita was on a spring day. And we all know that his purpose in coming here is to change Nobita's tragic future under Sawashi's request. This episode marks the beginning of the adventures and future changes for Nobita. In an alternate future where Doraemon does not appear, Nobita becomes a failure. Failing the university entrance exam, he struggles to find a job, eventually decides to start his own business, and marries Jaiko, Jane's sister. However, due to lack of proper education and business acumen, Nobita's company doesn't last long, facing bankruptcy and accumulating debts. After getting married, Nobita and Jaiko have up to 10 children, making the family's financial situation even more challenging. Although the details are not explicitly mentioned in the show, it is evident that supporting a family of 12 requires Nobita to work very hard. Comparing the initial wedding photo with later family pictures, Nobita's visibly thinner appearance is noticeable. However, after Doraemon arrives, Nobita's future undergoes a nearly 180-degree transformation. Not only does he marry the beauty queen Shizuka, but through various episodes of time travel, we see Nobita with a stable job, considerable income, enabling him to buy a luxurious apartment, and giving expensive gifts to his son like a robot dog, or memorable necklaces for Shizuka on their anniversary. In a sense, Doraemon and the appearance of the cat robot are the main reasons for the positive changes in Nobita's life. However, some people don't see it that way. There's a popular theory on Reddit within the fan community, suggesting that Doraemon is actually a destructive machine sent with the purpose of destroying Nobita. The author Fujiko F. Fujio once shared the meaning of the name Doraemon, which is a combination of the word Dora, from Noraniko, meaning a stray cat, and Emon, commonly found in traditional Japanese names. However, the aforementioned theory suggests that if you read Doraemon backward, it becomes Aura Demon, where demon means demon, and aura is a phrase that soldiers often shout when preparing for battle. From this, it is inferred that Doraemon is actually a demon sent with the purpose of destroying Nobita. We all know that initially, Doraemon came to help Nobita, providing him with a better life in the future. However, through various episodes, it can be seen that Doraemon's assistance is limited, while the supply of gadgets for Nobita's mischief is endless. Moreover, Doraemon possesses many dangerous gadgets that could impact an entire nation, such as the demand request phone, Satan's passport, weather control device, or even the atomic bomb. Isn't that a bit much for a robot nanny? Furthermore, due to the presence of Doraemon and these gadgets, Nobita becomes increasingly lazy and dependent on them. For instance, when frequently late for school, Nobita's first thought is not to run quickly to school or go to bed early to wake up on time but to ask Doraemon to bring out a gadget to help him. Almost every time something happens, Nobita will run to Doraemon for assistance first. While there are a few instances where Doraemon refuses, most of the time, he never rejects your requests. In episodes where Doraemon has to return to the future, we clearly see that Nobita is not useless. In fact, he is quite capable of being self-reliant. For example, in one episode, Nobita was able to live alone on a deserted island for 10 years without needing Doraemon's presence. This indicates that Nobita's becoming useless, dependent, and lazy is mostly caused by Doraemon. So, what has Doraemon contributed to Nobita's development journey? Or has it simply turned him into a lazy and dependent child? With these changes, is Nobita's future with Shizuka as promising as Sawashi claimed? Many people believe that there is no concrete evidence to prove the specific events shown in the dark future photos and Chaiko's fate that Sawashi depicted. It could all be fabrication, covering up an even more horrifying future, and that is also our next hypothesis. Nobita is a genius but pretends to be foolish. Many people have argued that Nobita is a genius, but it's challenging to associate the image of Nobita with genius. We all know Nobita as a clumsy, absent-minded child who tends to procrastinate, relies on others, struggles in academics, and isn't proficient in sports. Sometimes, he even exhibits foolishness, creating trouble with Doraemon's gadgets, resulting in a heap of problems. For example, he once took Shizuka rowing to prove how cool he was but ended up getting lost on a deserted island. The consequence was not cool at all, and Nobita's mother had to pay a considerable amount for the boat rental. To delve into Nobita's flaws, one could likely go on endlessly. However, paying attention to details in the show, you might notice that the hypothesis of Nobita being a genius is not entirely implausible. Firstly, there's the recurring theme of scoring 0 in exams. Submitting a blank paper would naturally lead to a 0, but Nobita always completes his exams. The probability of answering all 10 questions wrong in a 10-question exam is 0.5 to the power of 10, which is equivalent to the probability of answering all 10 questions correctly, achieving a perfect score. Nobita holds a record of consecutive 0 scores in exams, something not everyone can accomplish. At this point, one might argue that it's normal for someone who doesn't study to get 0 on essay questions. However, we know Nobita is afraid of his mother, so he would still need to attempt the exam to avoid her scolding. Moreover, some fans have scrutinized Nobita's test papers and found instances where he answered correctly, but the teacher marked it wrong, giving him a 0. Is this just a coincidence, or do the teacher and Nobita have an implicit agreement to conceal the truth that Nobita is, in fact, a hidden genius? Considering his consistent last-place ranking and not being held back a single time, isn't that a bit strange? From this, they propose the hypothesis that Nobita is not only not foolish, but on the contrary, he is a genius. Remember, in various episodes, Nobita always comes up with business ideas and ways to make money from Doraemon's gadgets, something almost no one else thinks of, including Doraemon. In long story arcs, Nobita often figures out how to get his group of friends out of precarious financial situations, not Shizuka or Sunio. One of the most specific examples must be the episode where Nobita travels to the upside-down world and encounters the intelligent version of himself named Nobiko. When both are kidnapped by villains, and Nobiko, hailed as an unbeatable genius, struggles to cope with heavily armed captors, Nobita displays the ability to turn danger into safety, rescuing both of them from imminent danger in the blink of an eye. From these instances, it's evident that Nobita is not a fool. On the contrary, he is truly intelligent and has the ability to adapt quickly. Furthermore, Nobita is a sharpshooting genius and a skilled rope player. He can even hit a moving target without looking or create 10 different types of knots in just 30 seconds, feats not achievable by an ordinary person but seemingly effortless for Nobita. All of this is enough to prove that Nobita's IQ is not low, and the continuous 0 scores could be influenced by Doraemon. Perhaps, feeling that his grandfather was too dominant and could pose a threat to society, Sawashi decided to bring Doraemon to pamper Nobita, instilling in him the tendency to rely on others to restrain Nobita's dominance, as hypothesized earlier. Alternatively, according to another opinion, Nobita might be aware of his genius but chose to pretend to be academically challenged to enjoy the life of an underachieving student, free from the pressure of exams and studying. Despite the sense of superiority that comes with the title of genius, Nobita decided to feign ignorance and only use his intelligence in life-threatening situations. This way, he avoids the burden of excessive responsibilities and threats to his life that geniuses might have to endure. Is the hypothesis that Shizuka is Nobita's mother? This hypothesis was quite popular in the Vietnamese fan community before and originated from a post on Facebook by someone named Triton. At first glance, you might find this idea absurd. Why would someone destined to be Nobita's wife end up becoming Mrs. Nobi? However, upon closer consideration, you might find that this hypothesis is not entirely unfounded. According to this hypothesis, in the near future, due to some unforeseen incident, Nobita suddenly passes away, and Doraemon unexpectedly ceases to function. Sunio, Jaen, and Shizuka, mourning the loss of their friend, decide to use the time machine to go back in time to save Nobita from the impending tragedy. Unfortunately, luck is not on their side. They are intercepted and attacked on their journey by an unknown masked assailant. As a result, Shizuka gets lost in time 25 years ago and is kindly adopted by the Kataoka family, changing her name to Tamako. As she grows up, she meets a young man with the last name Nobi who bears a striking resemblance to Nobita, and they develop feelings for each other, eventually getting married. After living together for some time, they have a cute son, and coincidentally, her husband decides to name their son Nobita. At this point, Shizuka realizes that her current husband is actually her friend's father, and she becomes Mrs. Kataoka Tamako. One day, Doraemon appears, completing the missing piece of their childhood group. However, to preserve the happiness of her family, Shizuka decides to keep this secret forever while welcoming Doraemon as an indispensable member of the family. Everything seems to be peaceful until one day, Nobita accidentally discovers the true secret of Shizuka's identity. In a panic, Shizuka unintentionally kills Nobita, and in fear of being discovered, she cuts off Doraemon's power. The time loop repeats. To ensure that Nobita will be born exactly as it happened in the past, Shizuka uses Doraemon's gadget to obstruct the trio's journey back in time, preventing herself from returning to 25 years ago. Certainly, because this is just a fun hypothesis created by the fan community, there are many inconsistencies. In the episode, When Mom Was Like Nobita, we met Mrs. Nobi when she was young. Tamako was cute but also fierce, completely different from the Shizuka we know, and just the appearance alone is enough to prove that Shizuka and Mrs. Nobi are not the same person. In one manga episode titled Doraemon's Additional Army, one of Doraemon's friends, Dora Nichev, once fell in love with Shizuka's mother and helped her in a violin competition. The episode reveals that Shizuka's mother and Mrs. Tamako were close friends in college, and the appearance of Mrs. Tamako at that age is also different from the Shizuka we usually know. But if we were to argue in favor of this hypothesis, we can still find some common points between the two. Firstly, the bangs and hair color of both are similar, and their appearances also share some similarities. Additionally, Shizuka loves baked sweet potatoes, and on many occasions, Mrs. Nobi is seen considering it a snack at home. Not to mention the fact that a person who initially refuses to let Nobita keep any pets no matter how much he pleads, easily agrees to adopt a mysterious green robotic cat into the family. Doesn't that strike you as peculiar? Jane was actually eaten by Nobita and Sunio. We all know that Doraemon's gadgets are created to make life easier, but many times they turn into disasters when they fall into Nobita's hands. In a hypothesis posted by Naruto's Village on Facebook, revolving around the 252nd chapter in the 13th manga volume, it is mentioned that Jain has actually become a feast for his friends. One day, when his mother was away, Jain decided to showcase his cooking skills and invited his friends over for a meal. Given Jain's questionable culinary abilities, his friends were understandably apprehensive about the friendly invitation. Caught in a dilemma between going and possibly not getting any food or staying and facing the consequences, the group had to find a way to deal with this challenging situation. Nobita decided to go on a hunger strike, sacrificing even the delicious spaghetti his mom had made to save his appetite for the afternoon. However, Mrs. Nobi was displeased to see her son refusing to eat the dish she had diligently prepared. To pacify his mom, Doraemon decided to use that super gourmet spice to stimulate Nobita's appetite. As a result, Nobita, Doraemon, and Mrs. Nobi devoured the plate of spaghetti to their heart's content. Armed with the gadget and Doraemon's assurance that any dish, no matter how bad, would become heavenly, Nobita confidently headed to Jain's house for the party. At this moment, the weather outside turned extremely ominous, as if a massive storm was about to hit. Even Muku, the dog, collapsed because it couldn't withstand the horrific smell, and even Jaiko had to run to Jain's house to escape the odor. At this point, the details of the story diverge between the manga and the animated film. In the manga, Nobita brought Doraemon's spice bottle and easily fooled Jain the first time. However, Jain quickly noticed the spice bottle in Nobita's hand, leading to a struggle, during which the spice bottle accidentally opened, spilling all over Jain. In the animated version, Nobita forgot the spice bottle before arriving at Jane's house, forcing Doraemon to use the X-ray hoop to catch up and save the day. Nevertheless, just like in the movie, everything was quickly discovered. Jane struggled with Doraemon, and in the midst of the scuffle, the spice bottle accidentally opened, spilling its entire contents onto Jane. The conclusion in the manga and the subsequent animated adaptation is quite similar. Due to being covered in spices, Jane becomes a delicious feast in the eyes of the group, and they all rush to devour him. In chapter 232, we witness the scene where the trio of friends, Shizuka, Sunio, and Nobita, armed with knives and forks, approaches Jane with the intention of eating him. However, in the animated version, things take an even more horrifying turn. Not only Shizuka, Sunio, and Nobita but also Doraemon falls under the spell. All four of them dive in to bite Jane, but he manages to fend them off. Jane rushes out of the house seeking help, but passers-by, including Muku and Cheiko, look at him with longing eyes, and everything concludes with everyone rushing to catch Jane again. Faced with such a situation, Jane's chances of survival are very low. In the manga, one could hope for Jane to escape outside and find help. In the animated version, even if he runs out and encounters others, Jane cannot escape the fate of being eaten. Everyone, including animals and future robotic cats, is affected and wants to consume him. Moreover, the sudden expiration of a gadget is highly unlikely because of its powerful influence. Initially, Doraemon only needed to sprinkle a bit, and Nobita could finish an enormous plate of spaghetti. Yet, Jane had the entire spice bottle poured onto him, sealing his fate as the sole meal for his friends. Now, let's discuss how Jane departs. In the manga, the group uses eating utensils such as knives and forks to feast on Jane, which can inflict significant damage and easily take a human life. So, in this case, Jane would be overwhelmed by his friends, lose his life, and then become their evening meal, albeit in a relatively gentle and dull manner. In the anime version, the producers replace dangerous weapons with teeth, which might sound less dangerous than knives and forks. However, according to scientific studies, the average human bite force is around 126 pounds per square inch, ranking among the strongest biting forces in the animal kingdom. Therefore, if Jane's departure in the manga was a quick and clean exit, in the anime, it becomes a torturous process. Since he won't be severed immediately, but rather bitten and torn by friends and neighbors, experiencing the pain until he stops breathing, it becomes similar to one of the most gruesome punishments in the world, the bamboo torture, where the victim is slowly peeled until death. At this point, you might be wondering who the giants encountered later are. Since Doraemon is a robotic cat full of magical gadgets from the future, it's quite easy to imagine scenarios like involuntary cloning, creating a robot, or bringing Jane from another universe. So, perhaps after consuming Jane and regaining consciousness, Doraemon rectified that mistake using the mentioned methods. Alternatively, he might have gone back to the past to bring Jane from the past to the future, creating a different spacetime where the event of Jane being eaten did not occur. Of course, beyond these hypotheses, there are many other theories about Doraemon, some frightening and some humorous. However, for the most part, these are taken in a light-hearted manner, as Doraemon remains one of the beloved childhood comics for many people, with its meaningful lessons about friendship and family. So, enjoy the video and feel free to leave comments below to discuss these theories further. And don't forget to stay tuned for more videos from MG Horror Studio every week. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.